Welcome to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to Peter Shankman. For those of you who aren't familiar with Peter's work, Peter Shankman is an author, an entrepreneur, and a renowned expert in harnessing the power of ADHD. He's the founder of companies like Help a Reporter Out or Harrow and Shankminds. And he also has the groundbreaking book that you've probably heard of, Faster Than Normal. And this has transformed the way that we perceive neurodiversity and productivity in all our lives. He also has a children's book out now called The Boy with the Faster Brain to help children understand their ADHD better. But what makes Peter truly remarkable is his ability to turn his ADHD into a superpower. He has conquered Ironman triathlons, skydived over 500 times, built successful companies, launched them in as little as 3 hours, and traveled the world as a keynote speaker, all while embracing his unique abilities. Today, I had the privilege of diving deeper into Peter's insights, his experiences, and the wisdom that he's gained along the way. So, without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Peter Shankman, and I really hope you enjoy today's conversation. It's great having you on the show. It's an honor having you on Give Yourself Some Leeway. And I think one of the things I really want to delve into is Faster Than Normal. And what inspired you to write the book Faster Than Normal?
So growing up as a kid, ADHD did not exist. What existed for me was sit down, you're disrupting the class disease. And that was always tough because I would get in trouble for basically just being myself, making jokes, doing whatever. And I didn't realize at the time, it took me years to learn this, but I was actually doing that because it was a great way to get dopamine. Every time I'd make a joke, the class would laugh. Well, what happens when you get dopamine? You're able to focus. So unbeknownst to me, I was actually getting in trouble because I was trying to learn. When I got older, I was told most of my life that I was broken, that there was, something wrong with me. And that's kind of hard on a kid when you go through that most of your life. And so for me, once I got older and I realized, okay, this, whatever craziness this thing is that I have, there's got to be something beneficial to it. And over time, I realized that every way I was living my life, all the things I was doing in my life, the way I was starting companies for fun, right? Selling them years later for millions, things like that. All these things I thought were just me being me. And it turns out my brain is wired a little differently. And once you're able to figure that out and you understand it, you can use it to your advantage. So for me, the purpose behind Faster Than Normal was the premise that my ADHD is a gift, and learning to drive, basically I have a faster brain. If you're given a Honda Accord and you learn to drive that as your first car, and that's the only car you have, and that's all you know how to drive, and then one day someone gives you a Lamborghini and you try to drive it the same way you've been driving your Honda Accord, you're going to crash into a tree because you're going much, much faster. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with a Honda Accord. It's a very nice car. But when you have a brain that goes much, much faster than your typical Honda Accord, and you're there trying to drive it like a Honda Accord, which is essentially what the world tells you to do, that poses some problems. And so once I realized that I could drive my faster brain and do a lot better with it, I started realizing that there were benefits to everything that, all the things that used to get me in trouble, all the things that used to get me whatever, had a lot of benefits to them. And so once I learned that, that was sort of how I put two and two together. And that's when I realized maybe other people can benefit from this, because, when you're told you're broken your entire life, it's kind of hard to sort of get over that, and so if I can help a couple people understand they're not broken, maybe there's something there.
And I think one thing that I loved about Faster Than Normal as well was that it challenged a lot of misconceptions that people have around ADHD. And could you elaborate on, let's say, what were the most common misconceptions about ADHD that probably impacted your life that were, let's say, addressed in the book?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of growing up was, sit down. There's something wrong with you. Why do you talk so much? Why are you speaking so? And at the end of the day, there's a lot of talent that is missed because people assume that you're just, you're talking out of turn, or you're trying to cause trouble. They don't realize that some of the things you do, you're doing for very specific reasons. And so for me, once I understood that and things started to make sense to me, it became a lot easier. So I tried to challenge those conceptions. I don't believe that ADHD is a curse. I believe that if you use it to your advantage, you know how to use it, know how to drive your brain, it can actually benefit you. Yes, there are a lot of downsides to it, but those downsides can be rectified, and they can be used to your advantage if you understand how.
Yeah, one thing I loved was how you say that ADHD is like a superpower, because often people use it, they look for a diagnosis and they see it as a condition or an illness. Do you believe that, let's say, when it comes to people who are looking for that diagnosis, or that maybe they felt that they should have been diagnosed as a child or something, do you feel that, how important is it for people who are generally interested in finding out whether they have ADHD or not to seek let's say, the accurate information? But maybe do they need to speak to professionals? Or
if people want to get diagnosed, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I encourage it. For me, it just sort of it confirmed what I knew, that my brain worked in a different way. But once I was able to sort of understand that, I never looked at it as a curse. I never looked at it as something bad about me. I never looked at it as something I needed to fix. Rather, I looked at it as something I could use to my advantage to help me.
And I suppose there are a lot of people who, let's say, don't have that same mindset as you, and they, let's say, as soon as they see it, they see that ADHD is let's say, the source of all their problems in life, and it kind of puts a limit on what they do.
Well, they're told that, from when they're very young, they're told, oh, you're broken. And for me, understanding that I'm not, and understanding there are things I can do to sort of change the perception around that was very important to me. And to be able to create that understanding that neurodiversity is not a curse. It's not something that needs to be ignored or not talked about. It's not something that needs to be looked at as this horrible thing. For years we looked at everything that was wrong as a horrible thing, and we're only learning now that not necessarily everything is. I mean, the concept of having a brain that is different is one of the things that's allowed us to survive as a species, right? Every entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs, have neurodiverse brains, and they use them to their advantage. They use them to understand that they can do incredible things. And so it's just simply changing the focus of the conversation and flipping the switch from you're broken to you're gifted. And so, again, not a lot of people have done that. And so for me, being able to do that is tremendously empowering.
Yeah, that was definitely what I was trying to get at. It was, how do you get people to flip that switch, to change that belief that we're conditioned with as we're growing up, that it's always been, let's say, tagged as something that is wrong with you if you have ADHD. It's like, how do you flip that switch to get them to think positively and see it as their superpower?
Well, I like to think the majority of things I've done in my life that have been good have been done because of my ADHD, not in spite of it. A lot of the talent I have has come because of my ADHD. A lot of my last company that I sold, I came up with the idea on an airplane, and I had launched it within 3 hours. Most normal people don't do that, but the speed at which people with ADHD move can be game changing, because you move so fast. You're able to take these chances and take these risks, and if they fail, they fail, but if they succeed, they're going to be huge. And so again, being able to try that and not worry about it and have fun with it is just wonderful.
Yeah. And another thing that I do want to address is, this whole trend on TikTok about ADHD is like, oh, if you have this symptom, you must have ADHD. Do you feel that, like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, that, let's say, there's or like a pendulum with two extremes. That it's, yes, in one sense it's increasing, let's say, the importance and the awareness of ADHD, but there are potential drawbacks as well. Let's say, is it um in a
I think
way,
I
yeah.
think the first thing we need to understand is that the majority of people on TikTok are idiots. That you have all these people giving out this advice. None of them are doctors. None of them have any idea what they're doing. And look, I'm not a doctor either, but I also understand, because I've been diagnosed, because I've worked with doctors, because I've learned about this stuff. I look at these people that, oh, here's the top of the, just because you know how to make a meme does not mean you're in any position to give advice on what works. I like to think that after starting and selling 3 companies, after writing 6 books, 2 New York Times bestsellers, and 4 bestsellers in their other rights, I like to think that I've got some credentials here and some credibility. The problem I have with TikTok is that anyone can do it. You launch an account and you can give as much advice as you want. The advice doesn't have to be accurate.
Yeah, and I feel that's kind of where the danger is. That's where people tend to flock for information and knowledge. Is there any way of, let's say, either using TikTok as a platform, or another platform where you can have a more constructive conversation or a more constructive dialogue around how to increase, let's say, more accurate information around ADHD?
I mean, I know that I get my information from medical journals. I read, and I do the discovery that I've gotten just based on myself, on the stuff that I've learned to myself. I don't want to see. I don't need to read a meme on TikTok and understand what's going on. I think that a lot of the places, for me, a lot of the information I get comes from self-awareness, just sort of the things that I've learned about myself since the beginning. And continuing to sort of understand that, and continuing to learn, and continue to grow. And I have to say in the book, like in the very first page, I'm not a doctor. The advice I give works for me. It may not work for you, but I like to provide a new way of looking at things. I think that's the best way to put it. I'm not telling you to go take medication. I'm not telling you anything like that. I'm just telling you that the things I do, I've found great success with, and perhaps you can too. That's literally it.
Yeah, I think that everything you can give as much, let's say, you can kind of give your own experience, and from there, let's say, everyone has their own personal touch or their own personal approach as to what works best for them. But yeah, let's say, what kind of tools do you felt really helped? I know you mentioned in the book the things like having a Scotty vest, and having planners to help kind of like schedule your day with ADHD. And they work for people as well who just, there's so much distractions in terms of your phone going off constantly and getting notifications, all these other distractions in life. How would you best, let's say, organize your day to maximize productivity?
I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I ever got is to realize that you control your phone does not control you. And so if you're sitting there and you're sort of, a slave to the ding, every time that phone dings, you get a hit of dopamine. So of course you're going to be addicted to it. So I turn off my dings. I have no notifications on my phone other than my calendar. And because of that, I control the phone. I choose when to look at the phone. The phone does not control me. And that's, I think, a huge thing. Just because we have the phones doesn't mean we have to spend all of our time focusing on them.
Yeah, and I think that's something that it's kind of like all these apps were designed for that dopamine hit as well.
Yeah,
And it's kind of another conditioning, as I suppose, over the last few years, where we've been conditioned to respond every time we get that ding. And whether it's Candy Crush or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, and or emails, it could be, you be constantly spammed by emails, and if you're responding to every notification, it's it's a lot of busy work, or it feels like you're being busy because you're constantly responding to all these notifications, but you're not doing it on your own time. So it feels
100%.
at the same time you're not getting any real work done.
No,
So you
100%.
feel like you're being busy, but you're not actually being productive.
No, 100%. You need to make sure that you're doing the right things the right way. you have to make sure that you are controlling your own calendar, for lack of a better word, your own schedule. You have to be doing things on your own. You can't hope that it'll happen in some other random way. I mean, nothing in my life happens without me having a calendar attachment to it. I can't let it. I won't do anything if I do it that way. So it's sort of very important that I live that way. I have to. And the funny thing is, I don't control my own calendar. My assistant does, because if I controlled my own calendar, I would screw it up. So I am not actually allowed to put anything in my calendar. My assistant does everything for me. She won't let me. It's not that she'll do it for me. She literally won't let me put things in my calendar because I screw them up. So she controls the calendar, and that has been a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's almost, it feels like you're, in one way, it sounds like you're restricting yourself by having that in place. But if anything, from what I see, you're setting that boundary for your own self-care, or for you're prioritizing your own time. So you're actually giving yourself more time freedom by setting those boundaries.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, because if I didn't do that, I'd go down a rabbit hole and I'd never look up again. So no question about it.
Yeah, because I felt the same at times where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do time blocking, and next thing, I wasn't putting any breaks into my time blocking. It was like, okay, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, where I'm meant to be taking my 15-minute breaks. I was like, I can take a few, I can skip a few of these breaks and just keep on going down the rabbit hole because I'm making all this progress. And next thing I find 10 minutes or 2 hours later, I'm like, okay, now I'm wrecked and I actually haven't gotten that work that I want to get done.
100%. You have to. And again, that's why you have to schedule things the way you do, because if you don't, you wind up never getting them done.
Yeah, 100%. I think another thing that has come up a lot, especially recently with ChatGPT, is the use of AI. And do you feel that there's any way where there's any AI technology that can be leveraged to help improve people's lives if they have ADHD or neurodiverse conditions?
I am a huge fan of AI. I'm a huge fan of technology as a whole, and I believe that anything that helps us do our jobs better and quicker is beneficial. The key is not to only rely on that only. You have to rely on a little bit of everything. If you rely on one thing, what happens when that one thing goes down or stops working? So you have technology that works, you have backup plans for that technology, things like that.
Yeah. Because one thing that I have noticed, especially like with the creativity that comes with ADHD, and let's say you have the likes of ChatGPT, and let's say when it comes to creative content, it's great there that it gives you a format or gives you a template to the content you want to produce, but it's the human side, the creative prompts that you come up with that helps to and it does the hard work for you in terms of giving you a template, let's say to write a blog post or to write an email or write a report at work. But of course, you don't, let's say, just copy and paste exactly what it tells you, but it gives you that framework that otherwise could have taken you 20 minutes to 2 hours, but lets you be in control of how you create it.
Well, that's the key. I mean, for me, I will not, I'll never like use ChatGPT to replace my own writing. But, if I'm on a time crunch and I have to get an email out or I have to get a deadline out, I'll use it to come up with ideas. I'll expand on those ideas through my own writing. But yeah, it's great for stuff like that.
Yeah. I like 100%. Like, I never copy and paste straight off because it's limited. It's biased in its own way, and it's going by its own information as well. But if you're, let's say, just brainstorming and you're thinking about a new idea, and they're like, I want to think about this and generate 20 questions about what will be the impact of this. Okay, generate 20 more. And it's like, okay, there's actually things that I haven't considered there. You're not going to publish it straight out to the world and claim it as your own, but it's going to get your mind thinking maybe even a bit more creatively or maybe more expansively on other things that you might not have considered. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand on AI as well. But it's great to see that we're kind of resonating there on that point. I think another thing is people using AI in terms of trying to diagnose conditions. Do you feel that AI is advanced enough yet to give us, let's say, clear or let's say accurate information in terms of diagnosing ADHD or neurodiversity?
And so you broke up. You broke up a little bit.
Oh,
Say that question
sorry,
again.
sorry. Like, do you feel that AI has, let's say, enough knowledge or information yet to give accurate information in terms of people trying to diagnose their ADHD without
No,
going to
no, not
professional
even close
experts?
yet. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be using AI to diagnose yourself. You shouldn't be using TikTok to diagnose yourself. Go see a doctor. That's what they're literally. That's what they're there for.
it's great to have a more, let's say, clarification on that as well, just to help ground people and not lose themselves in AI just yet. Yeah, and again, prioritizing getting professional help and getting that accurate information. Um, what role do you feel one thing, especially with give yourself some leeway, it's all about that putting self awareness, self acceptance, and self care first. What role do you feel, especially in faster than normal, that managing your ADHD? What role does self acceptance and self care come into managing your ADHD?
At the end of the day, you have to understand who you are. If you don't understand who you are and you don't understand why you're here, right? If you don't understand that, hey, everyone has flaws. If you spend your day beating yourself up instead of embracing those flaws, there's literally no point in living. And I did that for countless years. And a lot of people with ADHD do that. That's where imposter syndrome comes from, because we're told for so many years that we're broken. And once we realize we're not, everything can really sort of start to explode. So the key is figure out what makes you unique. There's a line from Game of Thrones where it says, embrace who you are, embrace your flaws, embrace the negatives about you, wrap yourself up and use them as in a cloak, and no one can ever harm you. And I'm a big believer in that. I think after 51 years, I finally made peace with the fact that I'm never going to be 150 pounds, right? I'm a big guy. And so, but on the flip side, I'm a lot stronger than most people. So there's always that benefit. There's always the way to find sort of what works for you and what doesn't, but you need to make sure that you're doing what matters for you first. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else, right? And that's a huge, huge point. People don't realize that if you're not taking care of yourself, I mean, the Greeks used to say this, that if you're not putting yourself first, you can't be expected to help others, right? So first and foremost, you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely a point that we need to drive home. That how can you show up for others if you can't show up for yourself first?
100%.
Another thing I did want to touch on was the boy with the faster brain. Is that a kid's book, or is it let's say for parents to understand kids better, or
It's a children's book. My goal is to make sure that no child ever feels as broken as I did when I was growing up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I suppose what would be, let's say, the overarching message or the call to action with Faster Than Normal? After reading Faster Than Normal, what will be the next step for people to maybe take action after finishing the book?
I think the best thing they can do is sort of, again, embrace their flaws. And in the book, I list tons of ways for people to improve themselves, to be more productive, both personally and professionally. And so I look at it sort of like being able to I guess create your own life, right? The life that you want, not the life that everyone tells you you're supposed to have. I think that's key. The more you can create a life that works for you, the better and happier you'll be. One of the key ways I do that is by understanding that this is who I am, and I'm not perfect, but I'm happy with who I am, and I've been successful with who I am, and so I will continue being who I am. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's literally that simple. It's kind of like the old adage, I am who I am, your opinion or approval is not needed. And so I will continue to do that, and I'll be kind to myself. That's the other thing, embracing the fact that my flaws are what make me unique and have made me quite successful. Knowing that, I find it a lot easier to be able to live my life. And now, look, I'm not saying that I'm certainly not some pompous, look at how awesome I am, or nothing like that. But I understand that the things I do have all led me to this very point where I am right now. And so far as I could tell, I'm doing okay here. And I think that a lot of people need to understand that it's, being who you are is really all anyone asks of you. That's all you can do. And if you're able to do that and do it to the point where you're confident in it and you're not, I guess, you're not second guessing yourself every 5 minutes. If you can do that, then you're pretty much ahead of the game.
100%. 100%. Peter, thank you so much for joining Give Yourself Some Leeway. I really appreciate you taking the time for joining the show. I know you're definitely your time schedule is pretty limited. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to join the show.
I'm more than happy to do it. Glad I could have me back anytime.